Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, and I'm Krystal Ball.
And I'm Saagar Enjeti.
Big show today. Saagar's got an interview with a high-level official from Border Patrol, and also AG Barr speaking out this morning.
Oh, yeah. We have a lot coming up today on Rising. So it's a busy day here in Washington. There's actually new developments in the Mueller investigation, or the Mueller report, I should say. Krystal, tell us what's on your radar.
Yes, this morning I'm looking at essentially no obstruction. This got a little bit of attention last week. The president seemed to downgrade no collusion, no obstruction to, well, essentially no obstruction. Let's take a listen.
I gave them 1.5 million documents. I gave them White House counsel. I gave them other lawyers. Anybody you want, you can talk to. At the end of the testimony, no collusion and essentially no obstruction.
Doesn't have quite the same catchy ring, but today we're getting some more details about why it was maybe necessary to downgrade to essentially no obstruction. So in some court filings in the Flynn case, there are some new redactions that have been unredacted. And in it, we see some more details about just what Michael Flynn told the special counsel about both WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign's engagement with WikiLeaks and pressure he received from the president's personal lawyer and people, this is carefully worded, affiliated with Congress. So we don't know, members of Congress, aides, friends of Congress, we don't know exactly. Pressured during the course of that investigation, both before and after he pled guilty. And Lordy, there is at least actually one tape of the president's personal lawyer with a kind of a shady phone call that he gave to Mr. Flynn about exactly the type of information they'd like to receive and maybe how he should conduct himself in all of this. The bottom line here is that we are still in negotiations over Robert Mueller coming and testifying before Congress. There are new questions about whether the president is going to assert executive privilege, so we will see how that all comes together. But the American people really need to hear from Bob Mueller. Saagar, did you read the text of the voicemail?
I did.
I mean, it's pretty
actually.
funny. It's
it
like,
was remarkable.
Yeah, it's like it sounds like something that you would get from like a mob boss, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the president's team obviously didn't want Michael Flynn to cooperate with the Mueller investigation. Ultimately, he didn't actually give them anything that came to consequence, as we know. I also do want to mention that there is some new development, actually, in this case. The Attorney General actually is giving two interviews. He gave one to Fox News and to the Wall Street Journal, where he said that government power was used to spy on American citizens and, quote, if we are worried about foreign influence, for the very same reason we should be worried about whether government officials abuse their power and put their thumb on the scales. So this thing isn't going anywhere. This is not going anywhere. We have Michael Flynn and Mueller possibly testifying, and then we have this all-new investigation into how the Mueller investigation started in the first place.
Yeah, and you know, I feel like there are real questions there that we should have transparency around, particularly the use of the FISA court, how that process works in general, because it does have massive, I mean, it has massive powers, and we should know that that process is effective. Do I think we're going to get straightforward answers and an accurate, you know, grasp of what happened there from this administration? No, I do not. But what are you looking at?
We'll see. Well, what's on my radar is immigration. And we talk a lot about immigration here because what's happening is that there's a slow burn crisis on the southern border. You'll hear later from Chief Hastings of the U.S. Border Patrol about how there are 100,000 migrants and asylum seekers in the last 2 months that have come in the last 2 months, which is a historic high. These asylum numbers are reaching points which are putting so much pressure on the Border Patrol that they're actually having to release them into neighboring communities. And what we hear from the president is rhetoric, but no action. The president spoke yesterday about his immigration plan, so let's take a listen.
Our proposal fulfills our sacred duty to those living here today while ensuring America remains a welcoming country to immigrants joining us tomorrow. And we want immigrants coming in. We cherish the open door that we want to create for our country. But a big proportion of those immigrants must come in through merit and skill.
So the president's proposal addresses merit-based immigration, the legal immigration system. Obviously, that's something that he ran on, and it alone is noteworthy, and we talked about it yesterday. But the ongoing crisis at the southern border, on track for 1.1 million illegal arrivals in the last year, has almost no discussion anymore in Washington. There has been no more executive action other than to build the wall. The fundamental problem is the U.S. asylum law and the procedures that govern what Border Patrol must do to catch and release families at the southern border, release them into our country, and allow them to stay here for years and years as their asylum claims are adjudicated. And so my real question is were the tax cuts worth it? That is the only part of the Trump agenda which has come to pass, right, Krystal?
But he didn't even run on these taxes.
Yes.
He promised to not cut taxes for the wealthy. And
so
that's by and large
all
what
we've
he
had
did.
are taxes, which has been engineered by the financial industry and by Republican members of Congress and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce so that Fortune 500 companies can buy back their stocks while
aren't even paying taxes
the
now.
middle-class Americans who put Donald Trump in the White House have seen no action on immigration. It took them 2.5 years in order to get to actual tariffs on China. So much of the working agenda, I get it, the economy is great as it's currently structured. The question is it structured properly? And if you look at all of the downstream effects of infrastructure, of our manufacturing system, whether people are still at the labor force participation rate, all of these things are pre-2009 levels.
Yep. True, very true. And look, we have different views on immigration. However, you cannot deny that what our asylum system right now is set up for, it is not functioning in the current world where you have mostly families coming from these Northern Triangle countries, and they are having to wait years and years for the asylum claims to be adjudicated. That's not fair to them, and that's not fair to the Border Patrol, and that's not fair to the American people.
System is broken.
No one's dealing with it.
So, next on Rising, 65 years after court-ordered desegregation, red flags are being raised that the country is actually moving backwards.
Virginia Congressman Bobby Scott's going to weigh in on Brown versus Board's historical legacy and what can be done to make sure classrooms are not further segregated again. That when Rising continues.